Some condemn him.
They are a shadowy cabal. It's a unit that's a law anti.
Whether alive or dead. That one doesn't have any.
Corporal Ahmed Rashid is still serving as head of a special police unit with a mandate to rid streets of gangsters and criminals.
The war between gang members and police has always been brutal. It's a war of bullets, bodies, and blood boundaries. But what happens when the cop fighting the war becomes something else, something darker? What if he decides that the law is a suggestion, not a command? That justice bends to his will and that fear is more effective tool than fairness? I'll be honest with you. I've cheered when certain gang members were taken down because some threats deserve no second chances. But what about those who surrendered? What happens when a gang member drops his weapon, raises his hands, and is still executed in front of thousands of witnesses? What happens when a man with a badge starts playing God and instead of accountability, he gets protection, praise, and even international recognition? Now let's talk about Eastleigh. Eastleigh isn't just a town, it's an empire built on trade, an economic juggernaut. Traders from every corner of the region come here to restock their shops. From the glitzy mall to the narrow alleyways, everything is available, cheap, fast, and without question. Even the black market thrives here, and like the rest of Kenya, Eastleigh has its demons: tribalism, clan rivalries, silent wars woven in daily commerce. At the heart of this web was Ahmed Rashid, a cop, a clan leader, and for a time, the most feared man in Eastleigh, an Ogaden clansman through and through. Rashid didn't walk like a cop. He didn't wear the uniform. He didn't need to. His reputation was his badge, and his gun, that was the law. Based out of Pangani police station, Rashid operated in plain clothes. But beneath the surface, he was more than just a rogue cop. He was the enforcer of a silent code, one bound by clan loyalty, business protections racket, and ruthless executions. At night, his team patrolled Eastleigh and the surrounding slums like a militia. Their targets, suspected criminals, many of them shot dead in the streets with no trial, no mercy, and no accountability. To some, Rashid was a hero, a savior who cleansed the streets of robbers, extortionists, and rapists. But behind that public image was a darker truth. Rashid's brand of justice was selective. Those he protected were mostly his own people, the Ogaden. Those he harassed, threatened, or eliminated often rivals from the Isaac clan or non-Somalis who dared to challenge his authority. One Somali singer publicly admitted that he had to pay Rashid for protection during a concert. His words were chilling. "You can do whatever you want here. If someone disturbs you, call me. I'll deal with them." This was the unspoken rule in Eastleigh. Setting up a business meant paying Rashid. Staying in business meant staying loyal. But even after paying, there were no guarantee. He'd still rob you, still intimidate you, still send his boys after you if you crossed the wrong person. Rashid was more than a cop. He was the final word in clan disputes. Business rivalries were often settled when Ogaden clansmen sent him to intimidate their opponents. One high-profile example was the assault of a woman named Ayan Dalad, a Somali TikToker and YouTuber. The case exploded on national media. She had brutally attacked a business rival, and when her victim reported her, Rashid stepped in not as a neutral cop but as an enforcer. He hunted the victim like prey. Even banned businesses like shisha lounges thrived under his protection. Uptown Lounges in Kilimani, Zayaj Lounge on Gong Road, both owned by Fatuma and Zainab from his Ogaden clan, remained untouched when the government cracked down. Why, you may ask? Because Fatuma was married to another cop. Hajer, owner of yet another illegal lounge, Luna Park in Pangani, Ahmed Rashid made sure the spots were invisible to regulators. But it didn't stop at Shisha. Rashid provided cover for sugar smuggling cartels importing contraband through the Kismayo ports. The sugar were repackaged in Isili and sold across Kenya. His connection? Fellow Ogaden clansman Ahmed Madebo, the puppet face of the operation. But the real puppet master? The late Yusuf Haj, a powerful Ogaden elder, former Minister of Defense, and a man many believed was behind the entire racket. Even the Kenya Defense Forces were implicated in UN reports. Rashid also facilitated illegal identification documents, helping Somalis obtain Kenya's IDs through his deep connections in Garissa and Isili. This wasn't just one cop gone rogue. It was a deeply entrenched network of power, protection, and a clan loyalty. And it wasn't all faceless. There were names. There were Muhammad Khalif, Rashid's close ally and fellow cop. There was a violent crew of Ogaden youths, his street muscles. And there were Amina Hani, the spy in the community. She gathered intelligence, settled disputes between Somali women, and most critically, organized protests in Rashid's defense when he was finally arrested for the extrajudicial executions of two boys in 2017. Let's not sugarcoat it. These two teens were gang members, ruthless, yeah. They were accused of murdering a police officer, stealing his jacket, and taunting his family online. They were part of a violent crew that robbed, killed, and bragged about it. But justice isn't revenge. That day, in broad daylight, surrounded by cameras and crowds, Rashid shot them point blank after they had surrendered. And in doing so, he crossed a line that no badge should ever protect. Supporters say he brought peace, that he scared the gangs into retreat, that he was the only match for Nairobi's trigger-happy thugs. But critics, especially human rights organizations, say he was a judge, a jury, and executioner, that he's the reason many fear the police more than the criminals. Some say you can't rehabilitate everyone, that for peace to exist, some threats must be erased. Maybe, but when a court begins deciding who lives and who dies, we stop being a nation of laws and become a nation of warlords with badges. Ahmed Rashid made Isili fear him, respect him. Some even loved him. But the question still remains, was he a savior or a sanctioned monster? Ahmed Rashid, once feared and revered as a no-nonsense plainclothes officer stationed at Pangani police station, found himself at the center of a national outcry after a chilling video surfaced in March 2017. The footage captured Rashid executing two unarmed teenagers, Jamal Mohammed and Mohammed Dahir Kheri, in broad daylight in Isili. The two were accused of being part of a criminal gang that had allegedly murdered a police officer and mocked the force on social media by posting photos wearing the fallen officer's uniform. The public execution drew sharp reactions. While some hailed Rashid as a street-level crime fighter, ridding Nairobi of thugs, human rights organizations and civil society condemned the act as a blatant case of extrajudicial killing. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, launched investigations and by November 2022 recommended that Rashid be prosecuted for murder. In April 2023, Rashid was formally charged with 2 counts of murder before the Kibera law courts. He pleaded not guilty and was granted 200,000 Kenyan shilling cash bail. His legal team mounted a strong defense, filing a petition to halt the trial altogether. Rashid argued that IPOA and certain NGOs were pursuing a politically charged agenda and accused them of using the case for fundraising and public pressure. He also challenged the credibility of the video evidence. Despite these efforts, the court dismissed his petition, ordering him to surrender to authorities. He was subjected to a psychiatric evaluation at Mathare Hospital and directed to make court appearance, both physically and virtually. Rashid continued to claim he was still a serving officer acting in the line with police procedures and public safety. His arrest marked a rare moment in Kenya's policing history, a high decorated and feared officer being hauled into courts to answer for a killing committed while on duty. While some still viewed him as a necessary evil in a broken system, his critics saw the arrest as a long overdue reckoning with impunity in the police force. As the trial loomed, the question remained: would Rashid face justice? Or would he once again slip through the cracks of a system he knew all too well? After being formally charged with the murder of 2 teenagers in Italy, Ahmed Rashid made several bold attempts to block and delay the trial, moves that only intensified public scrutiny around his case. His legal team quickly filed a constitutional petition challenging the prosecution itself, claiming that the case was not only politically motivated but also manipulated by human rights groups and NGOs for fundraising and publicity. He painted himself as a scapegoat, an officer who had done what others feared to do: take the fight to the gangs. Rashid's lawyer questioned the legitimacy of the video evidence that formed the core of the prosecution's case. They claimed it was edited, taken out of context, and that it failed to show the full circumstances of the confrontation. They argued that Rashid had acted in self-defense and within the mandate of his duty as a law enforcement officer, trying to subdue armed gang members who had terrorized the community.
In fact, this is the worst place here. But if you get them in act, then that is the end of them. We don't spare them.
The defense force also accused the Independent Police Oversight Authority, IPOA, of biasness, saying it was under pressure from foreign-funded NGOs and was weaponizing the justice system against a street cop who had risked his life to protect Nairobi neighborhoods. They claimed IPOA had failed to consult with the National Police Service and was being used to appease activists' agendas. However, the court rejected Rashid's petition to stop the trial and, in a stern directive, ordered him to surrender to authorities. In a rare move for a police officer facing murder charges, Rashid was also directed to appear virtually from Capitol Hill Police Station, signaling that court was determined to proceed with the case despite attempts of delay. These legal maneuvers painted a man deeply embedded in the system, confident enough to challenge the very institution meant to prosecute him. But the judiciary held its ground. The stage was not set for a courtroom showdown between Kenya's justice system and a man long considered untouchable. The long-awaited murder trial of Ahmed Rashid officially began in March 2024, nearly 7 years after the fatal shooting of Jamal Mohammed and Mohammed Dair Kheri. The trial was presided over by Justice Diana Kavedza at the High Court, with intense public interest and heavy security surrounding the proceedings. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecution outlined a compelling case against Rashid, announcing it would call 25 witnesses, including police officers, forensic experts, human rights observers, and eyewitnesses from the scene. The prosecution aimed to prove that Rashid had executed the 2 teenage suspects in cold blood despite them being unarmed and already subdued. During the opening hearings in March 2024, key witnesses testified, including the former Officer Commanding Station (OCS) of Pangani, who placed Rashid at the scene and confirmed that the officer had taken independent action without lawful command. His testimony directly contradicted Rashid's defense that he was acting under legitimate police protocol. Eyewitnesses described the shocking event of March 31, 2017, how a crowd had gathered in Isili, how the 2 suspects had already been arrested and disarmed, and how Rashid had executed them publicly with his pistol while onlookers screamed in horror. The video of the incident, previously dismissed by Rashid as doctored, was authenticated by media and forensic experts during court sessions and entered into evidence. Rashid's legal team maintained a strong defense, arguing that the two young men were dangerous gang members involved in the killing of a police officer and that Rashid had acted to prevent further loss of life. They emphasized his service record and framed him as a victim of institutional betrayal, punished for doing the dirty work that others wouldn't dare touch. The trial continued into mid-2025 with witnesses after witnesses presenting evidence. As of June 2025, the case was still ongoing. The prosecution remained confident, while Rashid, out on bond, attended court sessions and reiterated that he was a law enforcement officer doing his duty. The trial has now become a litmus test for police accountability in Kenya, a fight not just about one man's action but about the limits of power behind the badge. As of June 2025, the murder trial of former Pangani-based officer Ahmed Rashid has entered a critical phase. The phase, which has polarized public opinion for years, resumed on June 18, 2025 at the Kibera Law Courts and under stewardship of Justice Diana Kavedza. Among the most pivotal developments were the reappearance of the former Pangani officer commanding station, who once again took the stand to testify. The OCS reaffirmed his earlier statement, placing Rashid directly at the scene at the 2017 double homicide. He maintained that Rashid had gone rogue, acting without orders and executing the two teenagers suspected in easily without due process. His testimony added weight to the prosecution's assertion that Rashid was not responding to an immediate threat, but rather carrying out a personal vendetta, an act of revenge for the killing of a fellow officer. In the courtroom, Rashid remained composed. He has consistently pleaded not guilty, maintaining that he acted within his duty as a police officer in a high crime zone. His legal defense continued to argue that the two deceased boys were dangerous criminals responsible for the death of an officer, and that Rashid acted under pressure to restore order in a crime-ridden environment. According to his team, the officer's actions, though controversial, were not criminal but protective. Civil society groups and human rights activists have continued to monitor the proceedings closely. Many regard his trial as a landmark case in Kenya's struggle with police brutality and extrajudicial killings. Outside the courthouse, protesters and supporters alike have clashed in their opinions, while some hailing Rashid as a necessary force who helped clean up easily, and others demanding accountability for what they view as cold-blooded execution. As of the latest session, the trial is still ongoing. Additional witnesses are expected to testify, including community members and forensic experts, with the prosecution pushing for a conviction and the defense standing firm on grounds of duty and self-defense. The final judgment could set a powerful precedent for police accountability in Kenya. The country watches and waits. On July 28, 2025, the long-running trial of former Pangani officer Ahmed Rashid took an unexpected turn, one that exposed just how deep institutional reluctance runs when the justice system turns inward on its own. At the High Court in Kibera, Justice Diana Kavedza presided over a tense session meant to hear testimonies from 6 police officers summoned as key witnesses in the murder case. But only one officer showed up, the rest absent without explanation. Justice Kavedza didn't take it lightly. She found the 5 missing officers in contempt of court, ordering that each either serve 3 months in jail or pay a fine of 10,000 Kenyan shillings. But the courtroom drama didn't stop there. In a symbolic and restorative gesture, the justice offered leniency to 4 of the officers who later appeared in court and issued formal apologies. Instead of jail or fines, the judge gave them a different kind of sentence, an act of service. They were ordered to deliver basic care packages to remandees and court attendees: loaves of bread, packets of milk, bar of soap, toothpaste, and toothbrushes. The move, while unconventional, brought a rare moment of humanity in the courtroom, a subtle reminder that justice isn't just about punishment but also about accountability and care for the voiceless. The one officer who appeared in court on time was excused, but for the remaining defiant officers, the message was clear: no badge places you above the law. To ensure further compliance, Justice Kavetsa summoned the Inspector General of Police, instructing him to produce the 5 officers in court by July 31st. The directive was a direct challenge to the deep-seated culture of police impunity, one that has allowed figures like Rashid to operate in shadows for far too long.